God's righteousness, and all these other things will be added to you. They're words of Jesus, telling those who follow him to seek God's kingdom, the heavenly kingdom first, to see beyond the challenges of everyday life, to actually see things through a different lens, through the lens of being citizens of heaven, members of God's family. But actually, what does the word kingdom bring to your mind? Because thinking about it, it's not that much of a reality to us. Yes, we live in a country which is called the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We have a king. So you'd think that, yeah, we'd be able to get our heads around what Jesus is driving at when he's saying kingdom, God's kingdom. But King Charles, and indeed Queen Elizabeth, his mum, were very different kind of rulers to the sort of monarchs that would have been brought to mind in Jesus' day. Very much when we talk about a kingdom in biblical terms, it's about somebody with divine authority, with complete authority, who actually sets the law, sets the tone for the way the kingdom works. And I think there is something in that, in God's kingdom, that we need to hold on to, because the king or queen, the monarch, would set the tone for the character of the nation. That's not something we perhaps think of quite so much now, is it? But there is a sense of that. I think if you think about, say, the way Disney says it's the magical kingdom, you get some sense of the vision of Walt Disney, and that kind of the magic of childhood and the magic of storytelling and timeless tales. There is a bit of a sense of that when we think about that kingdom. And when we think about the kingdom of heaven, we should really be thinking about a place where the character of God infuses everything, infuses the way the nation feels, the way that what is lying at the heart of things, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say in my fumbling way. Because Jesus embodied God's kingdom. Jesus showed that, yes, it's humanly possible, attainable through him to live as citizens of heaven. That God isn't distant, isn't a distant monarch, disapproving of us all, telling us what to do and being forever disappointed in us. That's not what's going on in terms of God and us, God and humankind. It's more that God is creating this wonderful world in which we can respond to God's love and try to express something of God's love ourselves. It's got to be expressed in how we care for creation. That's why it's important to take the climate crisis seriously. It's important to look after the world's resources and not to squander them. And yes, to recycle, to reuse, to rethink how we design things, how we organise our society and our infrastructure, to actually use the world's resources more responsibly, and also in a way which is more just for the poorest on the planet, in ways that don't affect them, because the climate crisis disproportionately affects poor and vulnerable communities around the world in terms of rising sea levels, in terms of climate change. So being a citizen of the kingdom of heaven, it's a calling, but I think in terms of the language, we need new ways to get real about it, don't we? It's not about living in a heavenly democracy where we all decide what's right on our own. It's about actually taking God's word seriously, about looking at the Bible and saying, what does this tell me about what should be in my heart as I approach issues, as I approach the news, as I approach politics, as I approach what's going on in the world? Because the character of God should be infusing us. And the way that comes about is by deepening what we call discipleship, by learning to discipline ourselves to the way of Jesus, to follow in his way. Now in the Diocese of York we have the rhythm of life, we have a rule of life that has been promoted this year. It's something we are going to be engaging with in our churches. But at its heart, it's simply taking 6 things that Jesus told us to do and finding ways to do them. finding ways to commit ourselves actively to this rule of life, so that we are people of prayer, of hope, people who take Sabbath rest, people who have generous hearts, people who worship, people who get together with other Christians in worship and fellowship. And so I do urge you to engage with that when the time comes. There will be some sessions that we run in church. There will be other ways we find to encourage one another in that journey. So, together we'll work out what it means to live as citizens of the kingdom of heaven in the villages that we live and work and worship in. Doesn't that sound exciting? To actually become more actively citizens of heaven together, to encourage one another within our church communities, to actually look across the 5 churches of our benefice and work out and recognise where we are different and where we have slightly different complexions in our communities, but also to be encouraged by that, by the great diversity of how God is calling us to live out our faith. It's also going to be important that we extend a genuine welcome, to simply not look for people who are like us in the world's terms to invite to join us, to actually have an open heart to say, come along, the Lord is here. We are together, we are members of one family, and get beyond any barriers that humanity can divide to actually grow together. Exciting times, because Jesus is with us, Jesus goes with us, and Jesus calls us to the unity of the Spirit. Looking forward to it.